Greetings and welcome to In-Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. Waivers on U.S. sanctions now mean that Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela can continue to develop the Dragon gas field. To speak to the significance of that, we have Economist, Energy and Strategy Consultant Gregory McGuire. Thank you so much for making the time, Mr. McGuire. I want to start off by asking, what is the importance of that annual energy conference as it leads towards influencing policy implementation and just dialogue in the following year?
Well, I mean, the energy conference attracts, a lot of people. I mean, this year I understand it was one of the largest that they've had. And more particularly, this is where you got the government, beginning with the government, making important policy statements and important announcements that the industry certainly would be interested in. You find that the conference is also a huge networking opportunity. And that's one of the reasons why there are so many people there. Because this is where the big industry players meet with each other. You get new business, people broker new business, consultants sell the trade and so on. So it's like a huge energy market, if you will, when that's happening. So it's very significant there because the folks would take business decisions around what they hear there at the conference, so that it sets the tone not only for the coming year, I think, but more importantly, because so much of the energy business is long term, it sets the tone for the years ahead, not necessarily the current year, but even beyond that, 2-3 years down the road.
And looking, one of the words, if we were talking about keywords, you would have said business and networking a great deal. So not necessarily saying this was the genesis of it, but definitely that the fact that Dragon, the gas field, is going to be available for want of a better term at this point in time. What is the immediate implication of that?
Well, I think the immediate implication of that is that Dragon has, and the announcement has made a lot of people and the citizens and the industry hopeful about a brighter future. It's a really important development, but it's a development that is fraught with uncertainty even today. So there are a number of unresolved issues that we didn't hear about. I mean, the Prime Minister did mention the matter of the payment for Venezuela. There's concerns about the fact that this agreement is for 2 years, and those of us in the industry know that 2 years is not sufficient to make any deal commercial. So I think in general, and then there's the whole question of the negotiations around price and the capital spend and so on, all of which under normal circumstances involve complex negotiations. But I think that it is a start. It is a start that we could all be hopeful about. And as we go forward, we look kind of anxiously to see what transpires.
And I'm really glad you brought up the idea of that timeline, because it begs the question of what can be established in that 2 years while working on furtherance of that 2-year window. So what are some of the things that you think should we ask for a best case scenario in this 2 years, hopefully we may see?
I think it is difficult to say what. I mean, from where we sit here, I won't have enough information around where the project is right now, what has been agreed, because as you know, we were moving full steam ahead, and there was talk back in 2017 that gas from Dragon field will be available in 2020. So one gets the impression that the conversations and the negotiations had got to that point where it was going to take just 2 more years before we see first gas. Now, the world has changed since 2018. We all know about COVID, we know about increased prices. And then there's this business of the US sanctions that hangs a cloud over the agreements going forward. So best case scenario, I think, is that most of the commercial arrangements were set in 2018. And therefore, we just have to perhaps tweak some of those before we move forward. An important piece of this is going to be, does the project still have sanction from the operator? What I mean is, does Shell still willing to go ahead with the project in the context of the geopolitical issues that surround it?
And I'm glad you raised you cited the name Shell, because the location of that field, northwest of Trinidad and in Venezuelan waters, yes, but very close to Shell's Hibiscus field. Does that raise any concern? Are there issues? Are there things that we should look at because of that fact?
Well, I mean, you know, it's not that field alone. We need to remember that, and that's why this deal is so important. So its proximity to Trinidad and Tobago and its proximity to the Hibiscus, in fact, is one factor that may make it viable, because to get to the existing pipeline system is a short distance. I don't remember the distance right now, but it's a relatively short distance. And therefore, that's going to improve the economics relative to a field that was, say, much further away. So, and then rather than having to build 2 pipelines or 3 pipelines or 1 long pipeline, you just build a short piece into Hibiscus, and then the existing infrastructure is going to take it down to Point Fortin, or you have another piece to build from the Gulf into Point Lisas. So whichever way you look at it, the fact of the matter is that the presence of Hibiscus helps make the project economics look better than it would have if Hibiscus was not there.
And I think that no one has ever necessarily accused the US of being the most magnanimous. So is there something to be gained by this 2-year sanction waiver on the US's part, Mr. McGuire?
I think that I mean, obviously the US is doing things in their own interest. And those of us who benefit from it are fortunate to have benefited from it. But I think what is playing here is a concern about long-term energy security, both for the US and for Europe. The US has now become an energy exporter. So unlike the 70s during the oil crisis, when they were really struggling because of the OPEC squeeze, they're now a surplus producer and an exporter of gas. And so there's less concern for them. But there is concern more for Europe and Europe's future supply of natural gas. And I think what the US is doing is playing in its own interest and in the interest of its alliance partners. So if you have access to Venezuelan reserves, then you have access to significant quantities of gas. You know, we're talking in the area around the Dragon, not the Dragon field alone, but that entire area there, Mersal, Sucre, it's called, I think, that area is reputed to have about 12 TCF of gas. And then down south in what is called Plataforma del Tana, where we have the Laurent Manatee field located and several others, that particular area, that particular basin is reputed to have in the order of 20 TCF of gas. And therefore, we're talking about 12 plus 20, we're talking about access to reserve potential of about 32 TCF of gas. Now, that is significant in any century, in any situation. And that is really what is at stake. So you may ask the question, what are they going to do after the 2 years? Well, it will continue to hang in uncertainty until then. My own bet is that the long-term concerns about energy security and their long-term concerns about energy security will not go away. And therefore, continuing on with this project and continuing on with getting Venezuela gas out is going to be an important factor in their policy mix.
And with that, we take a short break. And you keep on talking about long-term, but I want to ask about short and medium-term implications or possibilities for that, especially, I say possibilities because, like you said, we don't have all the information. But we continue the conversation when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're having a conversation with Economist, Energy and Strategy Consultant Gregory McGuire. We're looking at the Dragon gas field, what it can do for Trinidad and Tobago, what it can do possibly for Venezuela. The Prime Minister would have said that this has implications for Trinidad and Tobago as well as the rest of the region. What are some of those implications? What are some of those possibilities, Mr. McGuire?
Okay, so if we talking possibilities, let me say that if this deal comes through, if this deal becomes real, if gas comes from Dragon and if gas comes from Venezuela in general, that provides a lifeline to the Trinidad and Tobago energy sector, right? Because, as you know, our reserves have been slowly dwindling. We have not been able to replace what we've been using. And if you look down the road, you will realize that the issues of gas, the issues of gas curtailments and gas shortage and lower production have been with us since 2014 or thereabouts. So this presents an opportunity for to remove that constraint of supply shortages and so on. What does that mean? Well, obviously that means that the petrochemical industry could now move full speed ahead. It means that when you go beyond Dragon and you get into the fields down south in particular, that LNG could now move on to full capacity with the restart of Train 1. Those two implications alone will bring significant new revenues to Trinidad and Tobago, significant new revenues to the government. And therefore, as you know, with government expenditure, that's what causes this economy to move. And so one could expect with higher foreign exchange earnings, increased government expenditure, reduction of our debt, and in general, the resources to provide us with a more, let's just say, comfortable lifestyle.
Now, you say comfortable lifestyle, and I don't even want to say that I feel a little triggered, because that lifeline, to me, also allows for people to kick the can of a problem a little further down the road. Where does that, what needs to continue in terms of energy transition, infrastructure work that needs to continue despite the possibilities, because possibilities are just that, even though you're working towards implementing. And with that in mind, I guess I should ask for a little overview from oil to gas and beyond, the work that you would have co-authored with Trevor Boopsing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, from the book is really documents the Trinidad and Tobago's journey from the early days of being an oil economy to being a gas economy. And in fact, when you think about it, it's really a journey from sugar to oil to gas. So it's chronicled there, and there are many. It's not just a straight history book by any means, but many elements of the industry are captured in it. Like for example, the whole question of resource human capital development, and what we did to do that. The whole question of local content, the whole question of environmental legislation. So anyone interested in how a small country like ours moved its resources and utilized its resources and built its capacity, that book documents it in a serious way. But you know, the other question was
We can
what
ask
was
about
it?
the beyond. We can ask about the beyond. So
Oh
does
yes,
this slow
the
down?
beyond.
Does this slow down the work of energy transition? What do we need to do?
Right, right. So I would not like to see that we get lulled into complacency with the idea that somehow resources are now available. Um, uh, Not only energy transition is an imperative, I mean, that's one part of it, but for Trinidad and Tobago, it really goes beyond energy transition into the age-old question and issue of diversification. Um, you know, we could transition to energy. That's probably going to take a long, long mile. But the more important thing is to find one or two other legs to stand on. We simply cannot continue standing on the energy legs. As good as it has been for us, and as good as it can be for us going forward, it is in our long-term interest, it's in our medium-term interest, in our short-term interest, as a matter of fact, to get new industries off the ground. And having said that, I want to say too that I find that we have been in the habit of talking about government has not built any new industries. The truth is that government helped to build the gas industry downstream at a time when government had the fiscal wherewithal to do that. Sitting down and waiting on government to build new industry just not going to make sense. What the country needs is an aggressive private sector and private individuals who are willing to take the risk and build new industry, in whatever field that might be. Surely the government could do more in terms of creating an environment for the growth of particular industries. But at the end of the day, it has to be the burden, I think, or the challenge is mainly for the private sector to do the work that they've done some of it, but certainly not enough of it.
I think many times there's this conversation about public-private partnerships, and also looking at the fact that many times the people who are there on the ground, that this is your field, that this is what you are interested in, you've done the work and the research, so you have skin in the game, it resonates with you, and then there may be a few things that can be done to ease that going forward in terms of that ease of doing business, which is something that we talk about on a daily basis, not necessarily in the most glowing of terms in Trinidad and Tobago, but being able to move away or diversify rather. Are there things that we can do in oil and gas a little differently, in energy a little differently, that we have not done, that allows us to make use of the capacity of the legacy of efforts that we've built over the years as a mature oil and gas province?
Yeah, well, I think because that the things that immediately come to mind really is the services industry, because we do know that local firms have built capacity and capability with respect to the services industry and serving the oil industry in Trinidad. And therefore, they ought to be export ready in terms of taking opportunities elsewhere. So you have Guyana and Suriname, Guyana in particular, Suriname to a lesser extent, that are now becoming major oil producers, in particular Guyana. Seems to me that every week there's a new discovery. And therefore, there's going to be a lot of work down there. And I do know that several of our service companies are already in the market and will continue to expand. And that market is going to continue to attract so many more people, not only in terms of companies, but also workers, because Guyana simply does not have the population to do the work, to cope with the kind of expansion and development that is going to come to place. So that's one place that it can be used. But the truth is that skills built in the energy sector, the energy sector is a business, and as any other business, skills can be moved from one business to the other. They don't change. For example, in finding water, and water is a problem that we have. There's always the question of geologists. That's what geologists do. Geologists find what's happening below the surface and find there's lots of water below the surface to be found as well. So those are the things that I think are important. The services industry, right? In terms of product, well, you know, we've spoken for donkey years. In fact, since this industry started, since Williams's great speech about you know, taking the hard road and manufacturing steel, aluminum, ammonia, methanol, etc., rather than exporting gas. Since that great speech by Williams, we've dreamt about downstream energy and downstream, the next generation of gas plants, and it hasn't happened yet. So I see now that we do have on the cards a move into hydrogen. And as far as I know, that project is moving along smoothly. One, because that's going to be a big turning point in the world of energy. You know, what we do with hydrogen and producing green hydrogen. And Trinidad and Tobago is early in the game, and let's just hope that that project moves quickly and comes to fruition as well. That'd be a step in the right direction.
And we want to thank you for pointing us in the right direction, giving us some things to chew on a little bit as we look at how things are progressing as more details come to hand. We want to thank you very much, Economist, Energy and Strategy Consultant Gregory McGuire. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, this has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you so much for joining us.